You have probably told yourself 100 times that you are just not ready yet. Not ready for the relationship, not ready for the big move, not ready for the change you have been circling around for months, maybe even years. And every single time you said it, it felt completely true. Felt responsible. Felt like wisdom. But what if I told you that the very thing you keep calling not ready is actually the most ready you have ever been, and you just cannot see it because you are a Virgo? And Virgos have a very specific, very stubborn way of confusing preparation with avoidance. That is exactly what we are going to break down today, piece by piece, layer by layer, until you finally see the difference between genuine patience and the quiet fear that has been dressed up to look like logic. Because here is the truth nobody tells you. Readiness does not feel the way you think it feels. It does not arrive with a fanfare. It does not show up with every box checked and every risk removed. And the longer you wait for that impossible moment of total certainty, the more life keeps moving without you. So if you have ever caught yourself saying, I just need a little more time, or I will start when things settle down, or I am almost there but not quite, stay right here. Because what comes next might be the most important thing you hear all week. And it starts with something you have probably never questioned about yourself. Tip 1. You confuse preparation with progress. There is a pattern that runs deep in your nature, and it is one you rarely question because it looks so productive on the surface. You prepare. You research. You organize. You make lists, you gather information, you study every angle of a situation before you take a single step forward. And from the outside, it looks like you are doing something. It looks like you are moving. But if you are being completely honest with yourself right now, you know there is a difference between preparing to act and using preparation as a way to avoid acting. That difference is where your entire life gets stuck, and it has been happening for longer than you want to admit. Think about how many times you have told yourself that you just need one more piece of information before you make the decision. One more conversation. One more sign. One more week of thinking it through. And each time that extra step felt completely reasonable. Felt like the smart thing to do. But then 1 week turned into 1 month, and 1 month turned into 6. And suddenly you are standing in the exact same place you were standing a year ago, surrounded by notebooks full of plans that never became anything real. That is not preparation. That is a holding pattern. And the tricky part is that it feels productive because your mind is always busy. You are always thinking, always analyzing, always running through scenarios. But thinking about doing something and actually doing it are two completely different things, and your sign has a dangerous talent for blurring that line. The truth is, you do not need more preparation. You have never needed more preparation. What you need is the willingness to act before everything is perfect, and that terrifies you more than almost anything else in the world. Because for you, imperfection is not just uncomfortable, it is threatening. Feels like failure waiting to happen. It feels like proof that you did not try hard enough, that you were not careful enough, that you missed something obvious. And so you keep preparing, keep refining, keep polishing, because as long as you are still in the preparation phase, nothing can go wrong. Nothing can be judged. Nothing can fall apart. But nothing can grow either. Nothing can surprise you or exceed your expectations, or become something more beautiful than you could have planned. Here is what you need to understand at the deepest level. The people who build the lives they want are not the people who prepare the most. They are the people who act despite feeling unprepared. They are the people who step into the arena while their plan is still rough around the edges, who launch the project before every detail is locked in, who say the thing that needs to be said even though the words are not perfectly arranged. And you watch those people and you think they are reckless or lucky or somehow wired differently than you are. But they are not. They are just willing to be imperfect in motion, while you stay perfect and still. That distinction is costing you more than you realize, and it has been compounding quietly in the background of your life for years. Every day you spend preparing instead of starting is a day the gap between where you are and where you want to be grows a little wider. And the cruel irony is that the more you prepare, the heavier the expectation becomes, which makes it even harder to start, which makes you feel like you need even more preparation. It is a loop, and it will not break itself. You have to break it. And the way you break it is not by preparing better. It is by starting before you feel ready. That is where your life begins to change. Tip 2. Your standards are not protecting you, they are isolating you. You have always been proud of your standards. They are part of your identity. You know what you want, you know what you will accept, and you refuse to settle for anything less. And in many ways, that is a beautiful quality. It means you value yourself. It means you take your life seriously. It means you do not just drift along accepting whatever comes your way. But there is a shadow side to those standards that you almost never talk about. And it is this: when your standards become so high that nothing and no one can ever meet them, they stop being standards and start being walls. And behind those walls, you are not protected. You are alone. Think about your relationships, the ones you have and the ones you have walked away from. How many times have you ended something or pulled back from someone because they did not meet a standard that, if you are really honest, might not have been entirely fair? Not because the standard itself was wrong, but because the way you applied it left no room for humanness. No room for growth. No room for the messy, imperfect, beautifully complicated reality of being close to another person. You expected them to show up perfectly, and when they did not, you read it as a sign that they were not right for you. But the truth might be that they were showing up the best way they knew how, and you were measuring them against a version of themselves that does not exist yet, and might never exist because perfection in a human being is not real. This same pattern shows up in your career, in your friendships, in the way you evaluate opportunities. You look at something promising and immediately start cataloging its flaws. Not because you want to tear it down, but because your mind is wired to spot what is wrong before it can see what is right. And that wiring, which you think of as discernment, often leads you to reject things that would have been wonderful for you if you had given them a real chance. You turn down the job because the commute was 10 minutes longer than ideal. You end the friendship because they forgot your birthday one year. You pass on the opportunity because the timing was not exactly what you had mapped out in your head. And each time you feel like you are making the wise choice. You feel like you are honoring your standards, but what you are really doing is shrinking your world, one rejected possibility at a time. The hardest thing for you to accept is that good enough is sometimes exactly what you need. Not because you do not deserve the best, but because the best does not always arrive looking the way you expected it to. Sometimes the best relationship starts awkwardly. Sometimes the best opportunity comes at an inconvenient time. Sometimes the best chapter of your life begins with something that looks, on the surface, like it is not quite right. And if you keep filtering everything through your impossibly fine mesh of standards, you will catch all the imperfections, but you will also catch all the magic. You will strain out the very things that were meant to change your life, and you will be left holding nothing but your certainty that you made the right call. But certainty without joy is just loneliness wearing a mask. And that is a mask you have been wearing for too long. What if you tried just once to let something in that was not perfect? Not something bad, not something harmful, just something real. Something with rough edges and unfinished corners and potential that has not been polished yet. What if you gave that thing the same energy you usually spend on analyzing its flaws, and instead invested that energy in seeing what it could become? You might be surprised. You might find that the imperfect thing, the not quite ready thing, the slightly messy thing, is the exact thing your life has been missing. Because perfection does not keep you warm at night. Connection does. Growth does. The willingness to be human together with another human being does. And that only happens when your standards make room for reality. If what you're hearing feels accurate, imagine what could happen if you applied this energy intentionally for 21 consecutive days. That's exactly what the 21-day program in the pinned comment is built for. Daily guidance, focused direction, and real momentum. If you're tired of staying in the same cycle, this is your structure. Tip 3. You use waiting for the right time as a permanent excuse. Let me ask you something that might sting a little, and I want you to sit with it before you react. How long have you been waiting for the right time? Not for a specific thing, but in general. How long has the right time been your answer to why you have not made the move, had the conversation, started the project, or changed the pattern? Because if you look back honestly, you will notice something uncomfortable. The right time never comes. It never has, and it never will, because the right time is not a real thing. It is a story you tell yourself to make standing still feel like a strategy. You are brilliant at this. You can construct a perfectly logical argument for why now is not the moment. The economy is uncertain. Your health needs attention first. You have too many responsibilities. The stars are not aligned. And every single reason sounds valid because you are smart enough to make anything sound valid when you want to believe it. But underneath all those reasons, underneath all that logic, there is something much simpler happening. You are scared. You are scared of what happens if you try and it does not work. You are scared of what happens if you put yourself out there and the world does not respond the way you hoped. You are scared of looking foolish, of wasting time, of being wrong. And waiting for the right time is the most dignified way to be scared that you have found. But here is what fear does not want you to know. The people who are living the lives you admire did not wait for the right time either. They were just as scared as you are. They had just as many reasons to wait. They could see just as many potential problems and pitfalls and ways things could go sideways. The difference is that they decided to move anyway. Not because they were braver than you in some fundamental way, but because they understood something that you keep resisting, that the right time is the time you choose, not the time that chooses you. Every season of your life will have imperfections. Every moment will have reasons to hesitate. There will always be one more thing to figure out, one more problem to solve, one more piece that is not quite in place. And if you keep waiting for all of those pieces to line up perfectly, you will wait forever. That is not pessimism. That is just the nature of how life works. Things are never fully settled. The ground is always shifting. And the people who build something meaningful are the ones who learn to build on shifting ground, not the ones who stand at the edge waiting for the earth to stop moving. You have a deep need for certainty, and that need is understandable. It comes from a place of wanting to do things right, wanting to avoid pain, wanting to protect yourself and the people you care about. But certainty is a luxury that life rarely offers, and the price of demanding it is that you miss everything that happens while you are waiting for it to arrive. You miss the adventures, the connections, the surprises, the failures that teach you more than any success ever could. You miss the feeling of being fully alive because being fully alive requires risk, and risk is the one thing your need for certainty will never allow. So here is your challenge, and it is not a comfortable one. Stop waiting. Not forever, not in every area of your life, but in one area. Pick the thing you have been putting off the longest, the thing you keep telling yourself you will do when the time is right, and do it this week. Not perfectly, not with every detail figured out. Just do it. Take the first step, even if the staircase is dark and you cannot see where it leads. Because the truth is, you will never be able to see where it leads until you start climbing. And you have been standing at the bottom long enough. Tip 4: you mistake control for safety. There is something you do so naturally that you probably do not even recognize it as a pattern anymore. You try to control everything, not in an aggressive, dominating way, but in a quiet, methodical, detail-oriented way that makes you feel like you have a grip on life. You control the plans. You control the schedules. You control the way conversations go by steering them subtly towards safe territory. You control the outcomes by only engaging with situations where you can predict the result. And all of this control feels like safety. It feels like you are building a solid foundation beneath your feet. But what if the foundation is actually a cage, and you are the one who locked the door? Control is your favorite illusion. It gives you the feeling that as long as you manage every variable, nothing can hurt you. Nothing can surprise you. Nothing can pull the rug out from under your feet. But life is not a spreadsheet, and people are not formulas, and no matter how carefully you try to manage every detail, there will always be things that fall outside your ability to predict or direct. And when those things happen, when the unexpected shows up uninvited, you do not just feel uncomfortable. You feel threatened at a level that goes much deeper than the situation itself. Because the unexpected does not just disrupt your plans, it disrupts your entire sense of security. This is why change is so hard for you. Not because you do not want better things. You do. You want growth. You want depth. You want a life that feels rich and meaningful and full of purpose. But you want all of that to happen on your terms, in your timing, according to your blueprint. And the universe does not work that way. Growth requires surrender. It requires letting go of the illusion that you can orchestrate every step of the journey. It requires trusting that even when things do not go according to plan, you will be okay. And that trust is the hardest thing in the world for you to develop, because trusting means releasing control, and releasing control feels like falling. But consider this. Some of the best things that have ever happened to you were things you did not plan. Moments that caught you off guard. People who showed up when you were not looking. Opportunities that arrived through doors you did not even know existed. If you think back carefully, you will realize that the moments where life felt the most alive, the most real, the most meaningful were often the moments where you had the least control. And that should tell you something important about the relationship between control and happiness. They are not as connected as you think. In fact, they might be working against each other. When you grip life too tightly, it cannot breathe. When you manage every detail, you squeeze out the spontaneity that makes life worth living. When you only say yes to the things you can predict, you say no to everything that could transform you. And transformation is what you are really looking for, whether you call it that or not. You are looking for a version of your life that feels freer, lighter, more open to possibility. But you cannot get there through control. You can only get there through release. And release does not mean being reckless. It does not mean throwing caution to the wind or ignoring your instincts. It means holding your plans loosely. It means making room for the unexpected. It means trusting yourself to handle whatever comes, even if you did not see it coming. That kind of trust is not something you build through more preparation or more analysis. You build it by letting go one small moment at a time and discovering that the world does not fall apart when you do. Tip 5. You overthink your way out of happiness. Your mind is one of your greatest gifts. It is sharp, analytical, observant, and endlessly curious. It notices things that other people miss. It processes information with a precision that would be remarkable in any field, any relationship, any situation. But that same mind, the one you rely on so heavily, is also the thing that steals your joy more often than you will ever admit. Because your mind does not know when to stop. It does not have an off switch. And when it is done solving real problems, it starts inventing problems that do not exist yet just to keep itself busy. You know exactly what I am talking about. You are having a perfectly good day. Everything is going smoothly, and then a thought creeps in. What if this does not last? What if something goes wrong tomorrow? What if that comment someone made last week meant something different than what it seemed? And suddenly you are spiraling, not because anything bad has actually happened, but because your mind has convinced you that something bad is about to happen. It has taken a tiny seed of doubt and grown it into a forest of worry. And now you are wandering through that forest, unable to find your way back to the simple, quiet happiness you felt just 5 minutes ago. This is what overthinking does. It does not protect you from pain. It brings the pain forward in time. It forces you to experience the suffering of imagined scenarios that may never happen. And it does so with such vivid detail that your body cannot tell the difference between the real thing and the story your mind is telling. Your shoulders tense. Your stomach knots. Your breathing gets shallow. All because of a thought, not a fact, not an event. Just a thought that your mind decided to explore and then could not let go of. And the cruelest part is that this pattern robs you of the good moments while they are happening. You cannot fully enjoy a compliment because your mind is already wondering if the person meant it or was just being polite. You cannot fully relax on a vacation because your mind is running through everything that could go wrong while you are away. You cannot fully celebrate a success because your mind is already cataloging everything you could have done better. It is like having a critic living inside your head who never takes a day off, never has anything nice to say, and never, ever lets you just be happy without qualification. But here is what you need to hear, and I mean really hear, not just process intellectually. You are allowed to be happy without understanding why. You are allowed to feel good without analyzing the source of the feeling. You are allowed to enjoy something imperfect, incomplete, and uncertain, and still call it wonderful. Happiness does not require your mind's permission, and it certainly does not require a full risk assessment before you are allowed to feel it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not think, not analyze, not predict. Just breathe and let the moment be what it is, without turning it into a problem your mind needs to solve. This does not mean your analytical nature is bad. It means it needs boundaries. It means there are moments in your life where the smartest thing you can do is tell your mind to sit down and be quiet, not because it is wrong, but because it is not needed right now. The sunset does not need to be analyzed. The laughter of someone you love does not need to be questioned. The warmth of a good day does not need to be defended against the possibility of a bad one. Some things are meant to simply be felt, and your homework for the rest of this day is to feel something fully without letting your mind pick it apart. Tip 6. You confuse being needed with being valued. There is a pattern in your relationships that you have probably never named, but once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. You have a deep, almost compulsive need to be useful, to be the person who fixes things, who organizes things, who makes everything run smoothly. And when people come to you with their problems, when they lean on you for advice, when they depend on you to hold things together, that feels like love to you, feels like proof that you matter. But here is the question that changes everything. Do they come to you because they love you or because you are useful? And would they still come if you stopped being useful for a while? That question probably makes your chest tight, and that tightness is telling you something important. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that your worth is tied to what you do for others. Not who you are, not how you feel, not the simple fact of your existence, but what you produce, what you contribute, what you sacrifice. And so you keep giving and doing and helping and managing, not just because you are generous, but because you are terrified of what happens when you stop. You are terrified that if you are not the one holding everything together, people will realize they do not actually need you. And if they do not need you, the fear whispers maybe they do not want you either. This is a painful place to live, and you have been living there for so long that it feels normal. Feels like just the way things are. But it is not normal, and it is not inevitable. It is a belief you absorbed somewhere in your past, probably very early, and it has been running your life ever since. The belief that you have to earn your place. That rest is laziness. That asking for help is weakness. That your value as a human being is determined by your output, your efficiency, your ability to keep the machine running without breaking down. But you are not a machine. You are a person. And people are not valued for their utility. They are valued for their presence, for their warmth, for the way they laugh, the way they listen, the way they make a room feel different just by being in it. And those are things you cannot measure on a checklist. Those are things that have nothing to do with how much you accomplished today or how many problems you solved or how organized your life appears from the outside. Those are things that exist in you simply because you exist, and they would still be there even if you spent an entire week doing absolutely nothing productive. The hardest shift you will ever make is learning to let yourself be loved for who you are instead of what you do. It means sitting still sometimes and resisting the urge to jump up and make yourself useful. It means accepting help when it is offered instead of insisting you can handle everything alone. It means allowing people to see you tired, uncertain, messy, and imperfect, and trusting that they will not leave when the performance stops. Because if they do leave when you stop performing, they were not there for you in the first place. They were there for what you could do for them. And knowing the difference between those two things is one of the most liberating realizations you will ever have. You deserve to be wanted, not just needed. You deserve relationships where you can show up empty-handed and still be welcomed with open arms. You deserve to rest without guilt, to ask without shame, to be a full human being instead of a perpetual service provider. And the only thing standing between you and that kind of life is the belief that you have not earned it yet. But that is the whole point. You do not have to earn it. It was always yours. Tip 7. You use self-criticism as a substitute for self-improvement. Nobody is harder on you than you are. Nobody holds you to a higher standard. Nobody scrutinizes your mistakes more closely. Nobody catalogs your failures with more precision and detail. You are your own harshest critic, your own toughest audience, your own most relentless judge. And you have always believed that this is a good thing. That being hard on yourself keeps you sharp. That self-criticism is the engine that drives your self-improvement. That if you ever stop beating yourself up, you would stop growing entirely. But that belief is wrong, and it is time you heard why. Self-criticism and self-improvement are not the same thing. They feel similar because they both involve looking at yourself honestly and noticing where you fall short. But self-improvement says, I see where I can do better, and I am going to work on it. Self-criticism says, I see where I fell short, and I am going to punish myself for it. One builds you up, the other tears you down, and the version you practice most of the time is not the one that builds. Think about the last time you made a mistake. Not a big dramatic mistake, just a small human everyday kind of error. Maybe you said something awkward in a conversation. Maybe you forgot to follow through on something. Maybe you made a decision that turned out differently than you expected. Now think about how long you carried that mistake around with you afterward. How many times did you replay it in your head? How many nights did it keep you awake, not because it was a big deal, but because your mind insisted on revisiting it, examining it from every angle, finding new reasons why it proved something fundamentally wrong about you? That is not self-improvement. That is self-punishment. And it is exhausting in a way that nobody around you fully understands because you carry it so quietly. The damage this does is not just emotional. It is practical. When you are constantly afraid of making mistakes, you stop taking risks. When you expect perfection from yourself, you never start things you might fail at. When your inner voice is always critical, you lose the confidence to trust your own judgment, which is ironic because your judgment is actually excellent. You just never give it credit because you are too busy cataloging the times it was not perfect. And so you shrink. Not visibly, not dramatically, but slowly, steadily, one withheld risk at a time. You become smaller than you are meant to be. Not because you lack talent or intelligence or drive, but because you have convinced yourself that anything less than perfection is not worth offering. What would happen if you talked to yourself the way you talk to someone you love? Think about that seriously. When a friend comes to you with a mistake they made, you do not destroy them over it. You listen. You understand. You help them see it in perspective. You remind them of all the things they have done right. You encourage them to learn from it and move forward. You are generous and compassionate and wise in those moments. But when the mistake is yours, all of that generosity disappears, and you become someone cold and unforgiving who demands an accounting for every flaw. You would never treat another person the way you treat yourself. And the fact that you find that statement so easy to dismiss is part of the problem. You have normalized cruelty toward yourself to such a degree that it does not even register as cruelty anymore. Just feels like honesty, but it is not honesty. Honesty would include the good alongside the bad. Honesty would acknowledge that you are human and humans are imperfect and imperfection is not failure. What you practice is not honesty. It is selective attention to everything that is wrong and willful blindness to everything that is right. And that imbalance is not making you better. It is making you smaller, sadder, and more afraid. You deserve better from yourself than that. Tip 8. You let fear of judgment keep you small. There is a version of you that the world has never seen. A version that speaks up in meetings without rehearsing every word first. A version that shares creative ideas without immediately dismantling them before anyone else can. A version that walks into a room and takes up space, not apologetically, not quietly, but fully and confidently, and without the constant background noise of wondering what everyone thinks. That version of you exists. It is not some fantasy or distant possibility. It is who you actually are underneath all the filtering and editing and self-monitoring you do every single day. And the reason the world has never met that version is not because you are not ready to be that person. It is because you are terrified of being judged. Judgment is the thing that controls you more than almost anything else, and it controls you precisely because you are so good at judging yourself. You know how it feels to be scrutinized because you scrutinize yourself constantly, and you project that experience onto everyone around you. You assume they are watching as closely as you watch yourself. You assume they notice every flaw, every stumble, every moment where you are less than perfect. And because you assume that, you spend an enormous amount of energy trying to present a version of yourself that cannot be criticized. A version that is polished, competent, put together, and completely in control at all times. But maintaining that version is exhausting. Takes everything you have. And the worst part is, it does not even work. Because no matter how carefully you curate yourself, no matter how perfectly you present yourself to the world, someone will still find something to criticize. That is not a reflection of you. That is just human nature. People judge. They always have. They always will. And the amount of energy you spend trying to prevent their judgment is energy that could be going toward actually living your life instead of performing it. Here is what you miss when you are so focused on avoiding judgment. Most people are not paying nearly as much attention to you as you think they are. That sounds harsh, but it is actually liberating. The truth is that most people are far too occupied with their own insecurities, their own worries, their own inner critics to spend much time evaluating you. The person who you think noticed your awkward comment at dinner last week has probably already forgotten it. The colleague you think is silently judging your work is probably too stressed about their own deadlines to give yours a second thought. The world is not a courtroom, and you are not on trial. But you live as though you are, and the jury you fear the most is made up entirely of people who are barely paying attention. What would it feel like to just stop caring? Not in a reckless, burn-it-all-down kind of way, but in a quiet, peaceful, liberating kind of way. What would it feel like to say what you actually think without running it through 17 filters first? To wear what you want without wondering if it sends the right message? To try something new without already planning your excuse in case it does not work out. To be imperfect, publicly and unapologetically, and to discover that the world does not end when you are. That kind of freedom is available to you. It has always been available to you. The only thing blocking it is the story you tell yourself about what happens when people see the real you. And that story is not based on evidence. It is based on fear. And fear is a terrible narrator. The real you, the unfiltered, unedited, imperfect, brilliant, messy, deeply feeling you. That person is not someone who needs to be hidden. That person is someone who needs to be shared. Because the qualities you think make you vulnerable are actually the qualities that make you magnetic. Your sensitivity, your depth, your attention to detail, your fierce commitment to doing things well, those are not weaknesses to be managed. They are gifts to be offered. And the world is waiting for them, even if you have convinced yourself otherwise. Some people watch, others transform. If you want to be in the second group, the 21-day guide in the pinned comment gives you a clear step-by-step process aligned with your sign. This isn't about waiting, it's about moving. Tip 9. You hold on to the past because it feels safer than the future. You have a relationship with the past that goes deeper than nostalgia. It is not just that you remember things well, although you do. It is that you carry things. You carry old conversations, old mistakes, old hurts, old versions of yourself that no longer exist but somehow still take up space in your chest. You hold on to moments that other people forgot years ago, not because you want to, but because your mind will not let them go. It replays them, re-examines them, turns them over and over like stones in a polishing tumbler that never quite finishes its work. And the reason you do this, the reason the past has such a grip on you, is because it feels safe in a way the future never can. The past has already happened. You know the outcome. You know the ending. There are no surprises left, no unknown variables, no risks you have not already calculated. And for someone who craves certainty the way you do, that kind of predictability is deeply comforting, even when the memories themselves are painful. You would rather revisit a known hurt than face an unknown possibility, because at least with the hurt, you know what you are dealing with. The future offers no such guarantee, but living in the past has a cost, and it is one you are paying every single day. Every moment you spend replaying something that already happened is a moment you are not spending in the present. Every ounce of energy you pour into analyzing old mistakes is energy you are not investing in new opportunities. Every time you compare your current situation to some idealized version of the past, you rob the present of its chance to be enough. And slowly, without even realizing it, you become someone who is always looking backward while life moves forward without you. The past is not a place to live. It is a place to visit, briefly and with purpose, to gather wisdom and then return to the present. But you do not visit the past. You set up camp there. You build a home in your old regrets and missed opportunities and what-ifs, and you furnish that home with all the reasons why things can never be as good as they once were, or why you can never fully move on from what happened. And that home, as familiar and strangely comfortable as it is keeping you from building the life that is waiting for you right now. Here is something that might be difficult to hear, but it is true. The version of the past you carry around is not even accurate. Memory does not work like a camera. It works like a storyteller, and your storyteller has a bias toward pain, toward failure, toward all the things that went wrong. You remember the criticism but not the praise. You remember the relationship that ended but not the ones that are still thriving. You remember the mistakes but not the 1,000 quiet moments where you got it right. Your memory is selective, and it selects for suffering, which means the past you are clinging to is not even the past that actually happened. It is a distorted version, filtered through your tendency to focus on what went wrong, and it is poisoning your ability to see what could go right. Letting go of the past does not mean forgetting it. It does not mean pretending it did not happen or denying that it shaped you. It means choosing to stop living there. It means taking the lessons and leaving the weight behind. It means accepting that some things will never make sense, some questions will never be answered, and some pain will never fully resolve, and choosing to move forward anyway. Not because the past does not matter, but because the present matters more. Because you matter more. Because the life you are building right now deserves your full attention. Not the leftovers of a mind that is still stuck in a chapter that already ended. The page has turned. The only question is whether you will turn with it. Tip 10. You are afraid that who you really are is not enough. This is the one you do not talk about. This is the fear beneath all the other fears, the one that drives every pattern we have discussed today, the one that whispers in the quiet moments when all your defenses are down and you are too tired to pretend anymore. It is the fear that who you are, at the most fundamental level, stripped of all your accomplishments and usefulness and carefully maintained competence, is not enough. That if people really saw you, if they saw past the organized exterior and the helpful nature and the perfectly managed life, they would find someone who does not measure up. Someone who is too much in some ways and not enough in others. Someone who does not deserve the love and success and happiness they have been working so hard to earn. This fear is the root of everything. It is why you prepare endlessly instead of starting. It is why your standards are impossibly high. It is why you wait for the perfect time that never comes. It is why you control everything you can get your hands on. It is why you overthink, over-criticize, and over-function in every relationship. It is all an attempt to compensate for the terrifying possibility that you, just as you are, without all the doing and proving and performing, might not be worth staying for. But I need you to hear this, and I do not mean hear it the way you usually hear things, where you process the words intellectually and then file them away without letting them reach your heart. I mean really hear it, feel it. Let it land in the place where that fear lives and challenge it directly. You are enough. Not when you finish the project. Not when you lose the weight. Not when you fix the relationship or organize the house or finally get everything under control. Right now. Today. In this messy, incomplete, imperfect moment. You are enough. The things you think make you inadequate, your sensitivity, your tendency to worry, your need for order, your fear of getting it wrong, those are not flaws. They are features of a deeply complex, deeply caring, deeply intentional person who takes life seriously because life matters to them. And the world does not need you to be less of those things. The world needs you to stop apologizing for them and start channeling them with confidence instead of fear. You have spent so much of your life trying to prove that you are worthy of the space you take up, worthy of the love you receive, worthy of the opportunities you have been given. But worthiness is not something you prove. It is something you are. It is woven into your existence the same way your heartbeat is. You do not have to earn your heartbeat. You do not have to justify it or defend it or prove that you deserve it. Just is. And your worth works the same way. It is not contingent on your performance. It is not conditional on your output. It is not something that can be taken away by a mistake or a failure or a moment of imperfection. It is yours. It has always been yours. And no amount of self-criticism or overwork or perfectionism will make it any more real than it already is. The invitation here is radical, and it is simple. Stop trying to become enough and start living as though you already are. Because you are. You have always been. And every moment you spend trying to prove otherwise is a moment wasted on a question that was already answered before you were even born. You are here. You are real. You are whole. And no checklist in the world can add to what you already are. So here is where everything we talked about today comes together. Every pattern, every fear, every habit of delay and self-doubt and quiet avoidance, they all lead back to the same place. They all lead back to you, standing at the edge of your own life, wondering if it is safe to step in, wondering if you are ready, wondering if the timing is right, if the conditions are perfect, if you have prepared enough, if you are good enough, if the world is going to be kind to you when you finally show up as yourself. And the answer to all of those questions is the same. You will never know until you try. You will never feel ready until you start. And the timing will never be perfect because perfect timing is just another name for the comfort zone you have outgrown. Everything you have been waiting for is on the other side of the action you have been avoiding. The relationship you want, the peace you crave, the confidence you admire in other people, the freedom to just be yourself without apology or explanation. All of it is waiting for you. But it is not going to come to you. You have to go to it. You have to take the step, make the call, send the message, close the door that needs closing, open the one that has been waiting. And you have to do it knowing that it might not go perfectly because it will not. But imperfect action will always take you further than perfect inaction. And you have been perfectly inactive for long enough. You are not the person who is not ready. You are the person who has been ready for longer than you realize. And the only thing that has been holding you back is the story you keep telling yourself about why you cannot start yet. That story is over. This moment right here is the beginning of the next chapter. And the next chapter does not require perfection. It does not require certainty. It does not require the approval of every voice in your head or every person in your life. It just requires you showing up imperfectly, bravely, and fully. That is all it has ever required. And deep down, in the part of you that knows things before your mind catches up, you have always known that. The question is not whether you are ready. The question is whether you are willing. Willing to be uncomfortable. Willing to be wrong. Willing to be seen, fully and without filter, by the world and by yourself. willing to let go of the version of you that plays it safe and step into the version of you that plays it real. That version is not perfect, but that version is alive. And being alive, truly and completely alive, is worth more than being safe could ever be. You have two options after this video: close it and hope things shift, or decide that the next 21 days will be different. If you choose the second, the structured 21-day transformation aligned with your sign is waiting in the pinned comment. The energy is already moving, the only question is whether you are.